Plot: My Blind Brother, 2016. A story of two brothers, Robbie, a local athlete and celebrity who happens to be blind, and his brother Bill, who's helped Robbie through everything for years. Bill falls in love with a girl, Rose, but as luck would have it, she starts dating his brother Robbie. Bill has to decide whether to put his own emotions above his brother or to be the bigger man. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over dramatically touching people's faces. And maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular generation. From tunnel vision to your television. And do they off this movie with audio descriptions? They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Join Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen White Cane.
Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to Citizen White Cane, the podcast that uses so much energy to analyze blind representation in media. It has no energy left for other aspects of life. My name is Sky Klaus.
I'm Melissa Bukta.
And we are talking about My Blind Brother.
The 2016 classic, My
that
Blind
everyone
Brother.
watched and remembers.
Yeah, that everyone knows about.
Yeah.
I didn't just find this movie last week and say, oh, I've never seen this before.
Oh, interesting. I did know about it. But
Okay.
it's because I listened to, like, you talking you two to me a lot, and that's Adam Scott, so they talk about his catalog.
Oh.
Wait, but that would have been after, actually, because I think it was... no, that would have been... This would have come out after, I think, but I feel like, I don't know, I've heard Adam Scott on a podcast talk about it, so that's how I knew about it.
I would like to hear that because I would be curious as to a little bit about the experience of making this movie.
Yeah, I know, it was in 2016, so I barely remember.
There you go. Yeah, let's just jump right in. This movie is classified as a comedy. It's not. I'm
It's
not
a romantic comedy drama.
Yes, it is a romantic comedy drama. And I smiled, I chuckled.
It's a black comedy. I feel like it's proper.
It is a little darker, yeah, than your usual slapstick comedy. And granted, I love comedy, and comedy doesn't have to be a joke a minute, slapstick.
It's much more situational.
Right. This is definitely more on the comedy is misery end of the spectrum.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Very Jewish.
yes. I don't know. I'm really lukewarm on this whole thing.
I'm kind of in a similar place. I was like, it'll be interesting to see where Melissa comes down on this, because I'm feeling kind of like, but then I guess that's just the correct opinion to
I
have.
suppose. I really wanted to like this. I went in really jazzed to check this out, and I'm not angry because I have watched it. I mean, I didn't really find anything truly awful
Yeah, that's
in this
what's
movie,
weird about
but
it.
it's just kind of...
It's like not that offensive exactly, but
No.
it like at times feels like it should be, because I was actually okay with the exact opposite thing, where I was like very like bracing myself and nervous about it, because I like Adam Scott and Nick Kroll
And Jenny Slate.
I like all of
Yeah.
them. So it was one of those things where I was just like, I've heard that this, like, given the plot, I just don't know if it's gonna be offensive. Like, it seems like it could easily be offensive.
Sure.
And so I was kind of just like, okay. And then it wasn't offensive in the ways it could have been, definitely. Like, you know, I think the idea is like, oh, well, Adam Scott plays a blind character, which, you know, first of all, I know him as an actor and he's not blind, so it's distracting
right.
anytime that happens. But like, so that's annoying. But then he also is playing a character that you're just not supposed to like,
Which I kind of thought was interesting. That was one of the things that I thought was interesting, as in his this character's take on life, and Adam Scott's take on the character is right. He's
kind of an asshole.
He's kind of an asshole,
and he's like an asshole with white male privilege, which I thought was like That I was really relieved about, because I was really worried he was just gonna be like, yeah, this blind person's kind of a dick, and like they're a dick because they're blind, you know, and blind
Right.
people are, you know, just
Right.
obnoxious.
And I thought this was going to, and once Rose Jenny Slate is introduced, and obviously Nick Kroll, what is Bill? Oh my god,
Bill.
I can't believe I forgot his name. Bill. So I honestly thought this movie was going to be just an hour and a half of these two men trying to one up each other to win this girl, and
It sort of is.
it is. It sort of is, but it's. I think the ending saves it, and so it's not necessarily that.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is very well developed.
Yeah, it is. It's a short movie.
It is very short, and especially with the relationships, they are so rushed, and they happen. Everything happens so fast.
Yeah, it's and you can't really. It's hard to like. I was trying to figure out why they felt very undeveloped. I was like, am I just used to watching TV shows where you just have so much more time? Like, because sometimes I do wonder if that's why I'm like, these characters are all undeveloped. But then I'm like, yeah, but they only had an hour and a half.
But then, and I kept comparing this to You and Me.
Oh yeah,
But and if you look at the relationship in You and Me, and granted that movie takes place over years instead of a couple days, that relationship is incredibly well developed. Granted,
not really though. It's kind of, I think it falls into the same problems of like that's why I wonder if it is a time. You know, you only have an hour and a half, and I feel like they had to introduce so much information right up front that you just don't have as much space to make the characters. Maybe.
Yeah, I suppose what the advantage of You and Me has is time. Yeah, we're spending years with these characters and not.
Well, also just I meant like time of like the duration of the both movies is just too short. Is what I meant.
Sure. Okay.
Like I just think that you're not that a movie doesn't give you enough time sometimes to develop characters in a way that would be nice.
And I just thought love was too strong a word. I was totally fine with Bill and Rose getting together. That didn't bother me. But I'm like, you don't love each other. You love. We're not there yet. You like each other. You like spending time with each other. You like sleeping with each other. But love? Are we really? Because obviously Rose and Robbie don't work out because they're definitely not in love.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so just to plot it.
Right.
So we have, and I am literally just going to say Jenny Slate, Nick Kroll, Adam Scott, because we are just not going to remember.
We're not.
They have names I can sort of remember, like, but they just are so specifically them.
You can't look at them and see and not see or hear Nick Kroll, Jenny Slate, and Adam
Bill
Scott.
is just like, I don't know. Bill is such a weird, it's just it's a name that seems very like, just common. I don't know why. It also seems a slightly wrong generation in my head, but I don't know why I think that. But anyway, whatever their names. So Nick Kroll is first meets Jenny Slate's character at a bar, and this bar is
having a funeral.
Like some sort of like, it's like not like, it's obviously not in a graveyard funeral.
Right. That I actually did chuckle at, because we go from this dinner at Nick Kroll's house that is not going his way at all. And Nick is like, I'm just going to go out and drink. And we smash cut to this bar that's having a funeral. It's kind of funny. That was funny, yeah.
And the guy who died by getting hit by a bus. And he got hit by a bus because because Jenny Slate's character, they had been dating, and then she was breaking up with him, and he was distracted and went to the middle of the street, and so now Jenny Slate basically blames herself for his death, and is like, I'm a bad person, I have to repent for all this, and this is how we meet her character. This is her first moment of being, and then she has sex with Nick Kroll.
Right, they hit it off.
After that,
and then they have this like one night stand, and then Jenny Slate gets all nervous and still doesn't really know exactly what she's doing or what she wants to be. So she just bolts basically.
Right.
Hi, thank you, bye, nice time. Don't ever talk to me again.
Basically.
Essentially.
And then she's like, "Oh, the way I'm gonna help people here is volunteer with a blind person."
And that blind person happens to be
Adam Scott, obviously.
yes.
Would it be funny if it was someone else?
Just some other
And Adam
some
Scott
other
was like,
blind
"Oh,
person.
hey, I know that guy. We're blind buddies."
Well, okay, here's one of the cool things. Nick Kroll actually has a blind best friend or friend in this movie.
In the movie, yeah.
GT. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And, sorry, I don't know.
I don't know why.
I don't know about real life.
I was
but
the one who's
GT.
like, "We're gonna call them all by their actors' names," and I was like, "Wait, in real life?" Yes. Who is? I think in some ways he seemed kind of like a character that was like, so we can make Adam Scott an asshole. So, because then he's kind of burnout more than anything. That he's not specifically a very, he's not the moral center of the movie or anything, but he's just not the same kind of asshole as Adam Scott's character is. But he doesn't fully have the purpose of blind people are different, because he's still kind of flighty, and I like it. I liked his character.
I did too.
Definitely more than Adam Scott, but he's just kind of always doing drugs is most of the scenes we see him doing.
Yeah, he's the stoner best friend that anyone can hang out with, that Nick Kroll hangs out with.
Right.
And talk about life and stuff.
And who doesn't go to jail because he's
because
blind.
he's blind.
Which
Okay,
I just am like, is that true?
I definitely can't speak to police. I laughed
He's
at that.
a white guy,
right.
so that's but so is Nick Kroll. But...
Yeah, I mean, I had a good laugh at that because it just reminded me of the movie theater. So technically you're supposed to only bring a certain kind of bag, and the movie theater staff have the right to search your bag. My bag has been searched a few times, but mostly people leave me the fuck alone because I'm the blind chick. So I have sneaked so much stuff into movie theaters because nobody stops
just to
me.
Eat.
Oh, I eat booze and food.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I used to. So I would wear this giant coat with really deep pockets, and I would smuggle in chili and
that's hilarious.
and booze.
Though, so it was really your ingenuity that is what your blindness.
Ingenuity and white privilege, probably.
Yeah, that's the main. But I mean, I could see in some cases that he's a white guy, so that probably already helps him. But
right, I think we have more trouble with this joke now than because it's what is happening in the world now.
No,
but,
hey, I mean, 2016, there Black Lives
Yes.
Matter definitely existed.
Yeah.
This is already if people wanted to get educated, it was not hard to do so.
Right.
So, I think it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't have a really good case study on how much that would be white privilege that he was enjoying, and how much that would be actual blind privilege. And that stuff's really hard to piece out exactly.
Yeah.
But in some places you probably would get fucked.
Sure.
And
definitely.
being blind would not necessarily help you, or could hinder potentially.
Right. I think it's just a funny joke that sometimes blind disabled people can get away with stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's we have these kind of self-involved blind characters, but then it's also balanced out by the fact that literally there's no characters that are overly empathetic.
Right. It's really hard. It's really hard to like anybody in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't hate anybody. Even Robbie, I don't necessarily hate Robbie, Adam Scott, but I'm really not over the moon about anybody either.
Yeah.
So through this whole thing, it was really hard to empathize and or attach myself to someone, to anyone.
Right, because you kind of Nick Kroll is probably the most audience surrogate, and he's just kind of he's just kind of cranky a lot of the time. And I do find Nick Kroll just inherently endearing for some reason. So I think that I was just he's kind of on paper a douchier character that he comes off as.
Right. Because I agree. I think Nick Kroll could take any material and make it charming.
Yeah. So it makes it, I think that's part of it. But because some of it is just kind of being unnecessarily upset about Adam Scott. Like, because Adam Scott is like, his personality is so big that, like, yeah, I think being the sibling of that person would be really annoying. And that he's just not really giving Nick Kroll any, like, acknowledgement, when in a lot of ways they're working together as a team. So, like, because Adam Scott is doing all these, like, fundraisers where he does, like, we start the movie where he's, like, running, and the two of them are running, and so, like, Adam Scott is getting all the credit for running the race, but the whole time Nick Kroll had to be running as well because he
couldn't do
his
it.
guide. Yeah. So, and then we see, I mean, they're definitely a different amounts of, like, shape ability to run, because Nick Kroll is, like, way more exhausted by the whole thing.
Than Adam Scott is. Although it was really cool to see, and a lot of it wasn't necessarily acknowledged, but it was just there. It was really cool to see all the adaptive techniques and adaptive sports. I'm kind of like, I see you, movie. That's really cool. I've never run with tethered to someone, but I have run on a guide rope before. And it's actually kind of a freeing experience, because you can just, I mean, it was on a track, so no one was going to get hurt. But you can just close your eyes and just kind of give up sight and just run and not necessarily have to worry about anything. It's great. Same with tandem biking.
Oh yeah,
I could. Biking. Oh, it's so much fun. I can just, like, pop me on the back of a tandem bike and I can just go. That's the only time I'm ever able to ride a bike without training wheels, or it was just 2 wheels.
Right. It's
just tandem biking.
Yeah, just get another blind person in the front. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Yeah, no, I want to go tandem biking. They're a lot harder to find rentals for, which is really annoying.
Yeah,
because it's like a lack of accessibility, basically.
You might have an easier time finding a trailer, which is an attachment for a single bike, and that makes it become a tandem bike. Yeah, it just makes you become a tandem bike. That's all.
It's like, but it's like functionally a tandem bike still. You're not just like a child sitting in a little trailer.
No, it's functionally, it's no. It's just one half, it's the other half of a tandem bike.
Okay.
Basically, and you can just, like, hook it up to the other bike. Well,
that's a good tip. Thank you. But yeah, so we don't see any tandem bikes though, but
there's the one scene, but yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. When are they tandem biking?
When right before they meet Jenny Slate, because she's dating Robbie.
Right, you're right. I totally forgot, because I was like, a tandem bike at the time, and then I forgot really cool. Somehow.
Yeah, because Nick Kroll has to, like, sadly walk the tandem bike away because Adam Scott leaves with Jenny Slate.
Right, because so Adam Scott is, like, basically when Jenny Slate starts volunteering with him, he, like, misreads something that Jenny Slate does as being a come on, and then she's like, oh, you misread it, but then she feels guilty, and so she kisses him, and then they're like, okay, well, now we're dating, and then you're just, like, very, like, Jenny Slate's character is kind of, like, being real shitty about it. You know, like, it is kind of a shitty move, and there's, like, to some extent, you weirdly sort of empathize with her more than I would want to, but you are just kind of like, oh fuck, that's shitty what she's doing.
Yeah, and hearing you actually talk that scene out makes me less confused, because I watched that and I'm just thinking, what? What is happening? I don't. Maybe it's my lack of understanding of social cues, but I'm just like,
so funny. She just says it later on. I didn't see what was going on, but she just narrates what happened later on to her roommate Zoe Kazan. She just recalls the whole thing to her, so that's how I figured it out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it is very. I don't know. What did you think of? Because it made me be, like, frustrated with her, or, like, I didn't agree with what she was doing, but then I don't know. I just kind of also was like, okay, Adam Scott's kind of an asshole. Like, I think if Adam Scott was more likable, it'd be especially upsetting. But, like, because he was not that likable, you were like, well, the person getting harmed the most is him. And so he's not really that likable of a character. So I think it just made it, like, dulled the frustration with her, because, you know, she was being shitty to someone who was shitty, and you just, it's slightly less.
Yeah, I
didn't know. Less angry about it.
Yeah, it was just this really weird love triangle, but nobody was really truly fighting each other for Jenny Slate. Not that I want to watch a movie like that, because honestly, that type of stuff bores me to tears. I really could care less.
It's very like toxic masculinity.
Right,
too.
right.
Well, this is also written and directed by a woman, so
and maybe that's why it feels so different.
yeah, I think it is, because it's also like on paper the same thing as well,
Right,
because they're kind of
exactly.
fighting over her. But like, I think it's just that you have to, like, Adam Scott's character is just he is douchey in a way of just like, he's weirdly more focused on like the visual, like very like kind of not materialistic, but specifically like appearances, like
Right.
which is like, it's like ironic, I guess, which part of me was like, okay, that's kind of funny, because it's like you're making fun of, you have a blind character that's shitty, but he's shitty in the way that you would expect a sighted person to be shitty
because
in.
he's always asking Nick Kroll to like tell him how hot someone is. What does she
Right.
look like? Well, I don't want to deal with her. Yeah. So that's kind of strange, but
yeah,
no, it's, well, I mean, he's described in the plot as a narcissist, and he kind of, that's what he is. He's a narcissist.
just very which is, it's weird. I mean, Narcissus. Wow, I never could say his name. No,
Narcissists?
the character that looks in the pond.
Narcissus.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds right. Ish. But if he was blind, couldn't see himself, so
Right. So
wouldn't work
maybe
as a character.
No, he wouldn't fall in love. Therefore he wouldn't have fallen in love with himself.
Yeah, so there you go. You can't. It's impossible. No, to be a blind narcissist. I mean, sure, it's possible.
Right. I mean, this character was interesting because we're so used to seeing the blind person as the put upon person, or the hero, or the person who needs to be lifted up, and Adam Scott is none of those things.
Yeah.
And for that, he almost feels more real or hyper real than any of the other blind characters we've seen.
Yeah, it's weird, because I didn't buy him as a blind character, though, really.
No, yeah.
First of all, because it's Adam Scott. And I'm like, I know you're not blind.
That's hard, yeah. Well, what was interesting about Adam Scott's performance is we're mostly spending time with these characters at home, so he just flat out never uses a cane. He does in the movie, like we do see him.
Yeah, when he's out and about,
or he gets sight guided, or
right. And I guess sometimes he does both, actually. At one point.
Right. And I guess his eye lines are fine.
Right.
They're okay.
But he is a bit stilted. I mean, Adam Scott as an actor, though, is a little bit. He does have a weird way of moving that's not necessarily very similar to blind people. Like, I feel like he does have kind of, he's just, his motions are very kind of stilted in a way that I don't associate with blind people, because I think the other JT, the other blind person, GT, moves a lot more like a blind person. Like, I think he's just like he has much more of a like body movements, and like
he had me thoroughly convinced that he's blind.
I know, and I looked it up, and he's not, but he did blind. A much better performance.
Wow,
or at least,
crazy.
I could not find a lot of information on him, but none of the information I found was that he was blind, so I don't know. He still could be, and it's just not on the internet.
Could have fooled me.
I know, I thought so too.
Right, I'm
he
like,
did a good performance.
If he's not totally blind, he's got to be partially blind.
Yeah, which maybe it could, I mean, like, honestly, in Hollywood, probably people hide that fact. But
that's
you never know.
Been told to do. Yeah,
exactly, which is fucking bullshit. But there's not a lot of information on him, which also could mean he's blind if he's having trouble getting roles.
Sure.
He is much better blind performance. But I think it's like part of it is Adam Scott, again, not blind, and also just like has a very like he just is a specific kind of like he just has a specific body movements in all his characters, and so it just it's not conducive to a blind character.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think his acting was bad. I didn't think his performance was terrible. But I hear what you're saying. I didn't necessarily buy him as someone who was blind.
Right. I buy him as he does a decent white dude asshole. Like, he's kind of small in a way that you would not expect him as a person necessarily to, like like be that, like he kind of has like a bit of a bigger personality when he plays like assholes. So you're always a little bit like, it's always slightly uncanny valley, but he does a better job, I think, of being like an asshole character than being blind. It just doesn't feel like it makes a lot of sense. Even Nick Kroll, I feel like, has a little bit more, he moves in a way he could probably play it better. I kept actually like being in my head just emotionally, I kept thinking of Nick Kroll's the blind one. I'm like, nope, it's the other way around.
No,
like they just seemed like it was the wrong way around. Like it just, Nick Kroll would probably play a better blind character.
Right, but then you would root for Nick Kroll, and you wouldn't be rooting for then
it would be my sighted brother.
Right. And that would, I was trying to form words and it all fell apart.
No, I don't know if that was, I mean, if the roles were actually reversed, would that be, I mean, it would be such a ham-fisted thing. Like if it was, if Nick Kroll's character was the blind one.
Right.
Like, and that was the dynamic, it would seem just kind of like silly and ham-fisted. But like, I don't know. It was,
I think they cast for, if it's down to these two men, I think they cast for who would play the better asshole, and the answer was Adam Scott rather than Nick Kroll. Even though Nick Kroll, you would have at least been rooting for the blind person if Nick Kroll had played them.
I think so.
And maybe that's the problem, because then Nick Kroll would be playing the asshole, but you're still rooting for the asshole, and that's not not really what was intended.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the thing, was you were like, just because of blind, it's fighting a stereotype of blind characters, but it is kind of, it's kind of like the feminist thing when people are like, it's feminism because the woman's an asshole and mean and rude to everyone, and kind of like all of the like negative masculine characters, this woman has it and that's feminism. It's like, no, it's not really feminism. Like feminism is, just feminism, a lot of things. But.
Feminism is equality. Everyone should be an asshole, or everyone has the opportunity to be an asshole.
Well, yeah, but I think that's the problem, is I'm like, that, fine, whatever. I'm like, I think if you have enough characters, like, I think that, I get the thing of like, okay, if you can have like a cast of characters, like if you have a show with an entirely black cast and you have a couple assholes in there, and people will be like, it's cool that we can have a show where, you can have just a variety. Now we have enough characters that like we can have assholes, or we've got to a point where we can have assholes. And that's like this kind of thing that people talk about, is like you've reached a certain point as a marginalized group when you can have an asshole character.
Right, I see what you mean now.
Which I'm like, okay, fine. But like, I think that like it is, I'm not just waiting for, I think it's also like, it's only once you feel good about an asshole character, like because you have so much representation, that it's just like an asshole is fine and it doesn't, we don't have to worry about it. But it's only like once you have enough representation, once you have a lot of blind characters, once seeing a blind person in a movie is normal,
right,
and that happens enough, and there's a lot of likable characters, and then having an asshole, it's like, oh, it's kind of fun. Or you can have like 3 different characters that are blind and one of them's an asshole, and it's like, oh, it's fun, there's so many blind characters in this that, one of them could be an asshole and I'm not mad about it. But like, it's not, we're not there yet.
No, it's also just not, it may feel like Adam Scott is just a more of a regular person because he's not put up on a pedestal and he is an asshole, but it's also not very fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris Pine, blind dating, Danny can be an ass.
Yeah.
But he is so much more fun to watch.
Yeah, I was thinking about blind dating with this, and I think in the ways that I got frustrated with his character, and that was more because I was relating to him, or you're not supposed to relate to Adam Scott.
No, he is a narcissistic asshole, and he has to go on his own weird little character journey. So does Nick Kroll in the end, because it's not. What I did like about this movie is it's not necessarily about who gets Jenny Slate or who Jenny Slate is going to choose.
Right.
She's not a prize to be won. Anyway, it's about these two brothers having to come to terms with what the hell their relationship is.
Right.
But I think that movie, because that's the ending we get, but I also think that movie is more interesting than whatever this weird love triangle thing is.
Yeah, it's way more about their relationship as brothers, which, I mean, makes sense. The movie's called My Blind Brother.
Sure.
So it's kind of highlighting that
yeah.
as the main emotional crux of the movie.
Right.
But, and, you know, and it kind of plays Jenny Slade's character, I think, wanting to, like, you know, volunteer and stuff, but then just, like, helping Adam Scott in this kind of, she's kind of pity dating him, basically. That, I think that's an interesting social commentary in a way, but then again, because Adam Scott's very unlikable, it's just like, okay, well, that's kind of a interesting, you know, thing that could happen theoretically, but that's a pretty dark thing too. Like, it feels very dark to me, so I'm like, I'm happy I don't relate to Adam Scott, because I don't want to watch an actual blind person that I can relate to go through this, because that seems really shitty. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's some stuff where they kind of use his blindness in ways where you're like, okay, kind of a commentary, but then it's just like, that's not, the movie is trying very hard not to do that. Like, I feel like it's always in the background. Like, at one point, he, like, the whole movie is Adam Scott getting ready to swim on, like, I don't
swim across this huge lake.
Right.
Yeah.
And he is needing to get permission to do it, and the Coast Guard is just like, we think it's too dangerous, we're not going to let a blind person do this, and we're shutting this down. And then that's kind of like, that part of the plot is said, and I'm like, oh, that's like a real, that sucks. Like, you know, that they're not willing to, like, help or
but that's the B story.
Right. That's just like, so, you know, it's supposed to be a plot device, if anything.
Things are just said in this movie, and I'm not sure if, because the way they're delivered, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a joke. Is this why this comes off as a dark comedy? Because when obviously Adam Scott does get to do the lake thing, when he's being interviewed by the news reporter, one of the last things he says is like, oh, she asks him about being born blind, and he's like, oh yeah, no, my brother and I were having a diving contest, and he told me to jump, and the water was really shallow, and I jumped in the pool, and now I'm blind. Cut. And I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, which is weird. Yeah, because you're like, that's a big emotion, and you expect the next scene to be about that, and it's just kind of not.
Right. I mean, it is the scene where they're just kind of awkwardly standing in the beach showers or whatever, and Nick Kroll is packing the bag, and Adam Scott is just like badgering him about, do you have everything? Do you have everything?
Oh, I thought the next shot was of Jenny Slate coming into the bathroom where Nick Kroll is, or coming into some place where Nick Kroll is, and they're talking about it like, oh, we should tell Adam Scott about a relationship.
It probably
because I was just like, oh, she's coming to, like, well, because I thought like, oh, she's coming to talk to him about this revelation that we just witnessed about that's how he went blind, and then they're just not talking about that at all.
Right. And so not even brought up. Right. So that's my question. Is that supposed to be played off as a joke, or because that's like, because it's
like a character, it makes the stakes of their relationship different, but then you're also like, this is like an hour and 10 minutes into the movie, this is like near the very end, so part of you is like, why do we wait this long then for that revelation?
Right. Why do we need to know? I didn't need to know how Robbie Adam Scott was blinded. I don't need to know that,
or like that it was something that, because I think there's a lot of like, you know, the movie deals a lot with people blaming their character off of unfortunate events, like, because we have both the bus hitting the ex-boyfriend and Adam Scott going blind because of like something silly with that Nick Kroll kind of orchestrated. So there's kind of this theme between, I mean, specifically with Nick Kroll and Jenny Slate, that they both feel responsible for someone losing dying or going blind. But then it's like, how much can you feel responsible for that? It's like the movie kind of is doing that, but then it never you never really fully realize it entirely, especially not with Nick Kroll's character, because he is sort of self-loathing, but then it's just like his self-loathing is very different, and it's a lot more internal, so you're not really getting a lot of like window into his weird self-loathing in the same way you get Jenny Slate is constantly narrating what she's thinking about things, and I think that's more engaging because it gives you a lot more information about her mental process, and like, you know, she blames herself for this and this, and I feel like that you get a window into her and her kind of inner monologue, and you just don't really get that with Nick Kroll like as much. And so I think that also made the parallel between their stories kind of cheapened it, because you're getting way more insight into one and way less insight into the other.
I mean, not until the lake, basically, and that's at the very end when they finally have to confront each other about their relationship.
Right. But then it's like, what, I'm trying to remember exactly, because it's also, the climax is kind of weird, because at first, so we have like Adam Scott is like gets what happens is they have like a system where they're using a bullhorn to tell him to go left or right, which is a terrible system.
It is. And this is another point. I chuckled. I laughed. Yeah. They're in the lake, and it's like brr, like 1 for left, and then brr, brr, 2 for right, and then 3 for danger. Well, what they didn't anticipate is there's all these other boats on the lake that are all honking their horns.
Right. So he keeps just randomly turning because another boat is honking the same horn, which is, it's a funny bit that they didn't think that through. But part of you is also like, isn't that a microphone? Can you just say left, right? Can you just sit there an easy way to like change the system?
Yeah, which is what Jenny Slate ends up doing.
Yeah, right. Which I guess, but he's like, we have a system, and then they just lose, and then it just sinks at a certain point while they're fighting, and so and then Adam Scott is like, fuck you, I'm gonna go end this without any help, and so there is like this whole scene where we don't know if Adam Scott is safe, because he's just swum off like without any sort of guide, and they've basically lost him. And then you have the climax is when like Nick Kroll finally finds Adam Scott. Now the sun's gone down, and so it's nighttime, so like you have to assume some time has passed since when he was left, and
well, he finds Adam Scott clinging to a buoy. Right. Because the impetus of this fight, besides the boat horns, was the fact that Jenny forgot to pack water, because he asks for water and there's none.
And he's just like, it's kind of just like they're not talking to each other. They're just they're both yelling about stuff, and like Adam Scott is like extremely not listening to the point where you're just kind of like, come on, dude. Like, like there's just like, these are all pretty small things that, but I think for me that also, I was like, okay, so they're just like, the whole thing is they're fighting because they're children. Like it's not like there wasn't this like very strong emotional thing yet. I feel like it was just like Adam Scott's just not listening and Nick Kroll is not communicating well. Like, and so those two things are just so volatile, and that's really all that's happening. Is just like a complete lack of ability to communicate, which, I guess like is the kind of metaphor of like, you can't do that if one person is blind. I mean, it's just like, you can't have a blind person who doesn't listen, and you can't have the sighted person who can't communicate. Like that is an impasse that is, actually dangerous, especially in this situation, like that. But it is a dangerous thing. But then also part of me was like, that's why in this way some of Adam Scott's character things are like, okay, but he couldn't really survive this way. Like at a certain point he has to start listening to people. Like blind people don't exactly have the choice to not listen to people, but then you're just kind of like, I really had to be like, okay, this is just like movie logic. But it's like, you never really bought that. I just didn't buy that he could be a real person, so I had to just be like, whatever, I need to suspend my disbelief on this. But it's hard, because then it's like, how do we talk about it when I don't even buy him as a real person entirely? Right.
Well, I mean, you could say that the way he copes with his situation in life is he's a health nut, and he's always doing these things to prove, not that he isn't blind, but to prove that he can do these things.
Right, that he's capable.
That he's capable. That's what the crux of their fight in the middle of the lake is. Right. And when Nick Kroll finally admits to him that he's one of the bravest people that he knows.
Yeah. And then we have Adam Scott saying that he's just tired of he says something about how being blind, that was what I was trying to rip off with my intro thing, but like that being blind just takes up all his energy. He doesn't always have energy left, which I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I get that. It reminded me of the spoons quote.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't, there's a day when you just don't have enough spoons to give. You've given them out already.
Yeah, but it also kind of, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that, but at the same time, I was like, okay, I guess this is sort of also comment on toxic masculinity, because like to not have the energy for the people around you is like that felt like toxic masculinity more than anything, and really that like if blindness is taking up all this energy, like, and that you can get a break from that by turning to the people in your life, like that is a way of kind of, when you reach out to people and you become more part of a community, then a lot of times the energy it takes to be blind goes way down. Like it's, you know, like it just, I think that is a dynamic. And so really you have to, which I mean is not wrong, but you have to assume that this character has just lived in such a toxic masculine environment,
Right.
and has been raised that way in a way that he just has never tried to reach out to other people.
Right. He's raising all this money for this blind community. And yet Nick Kroll is the one who actually has a blind friend who actually engages with
he
this
doesn't
community.
really have other blind friends.
Right. Robbie is just, or Adam Scott is just, he's doing all of this, but he doesn't really connect to anybody.
Right, and it's very much like for the optics of it, which is like, you know, again, which to me I was like, okay, but that's like, at that point you're being just kind of ironic. You're not actually looking to this character, you know, like it's not really then it's not about blindness or toxic masculinity. It's just like, okay, it's funny because a blind character is so obsessed with optics, and that's funny. But
Well,
you know,
The bit, what did you think about the bit in the, not to backtrack, but what did you think about the bit in the restaurant with the disabled person who has, it's never stated that they have Tourette's, but it's some
they
kind
have
of a,
some sort of vocal,
yeah, where they have a tick, they have a
yeah.
vocal tick, and so, you know, and then Robbie turns around and is like, "Could you be more quiet? We are trying to eat." And then his sister or girlfriend or the woman who's with him is like, "Oh no, I know, I'm so sorry. He's disabled." And Robbie's like, "Well, I'm disabled too."
It's just like kind of a weird. I mean, yeah,
it reminds me of situations that I've been in with sighted friends or sighted people, when they're like, "Oh yeah, you know, there's blind people, but then there's you.
oh god,
You know,
yeah.
you're a different kind of blind
Yes.
person." You know, I go through this with my roommate
Just want to
sometimes.
stab everyone.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
if the TSA is,
Yeah.
TSA. Oh my god, if NSA is listening, I don't.
We don't actually want to.
I don't want to stab people. I just always say
Metaphorically.
that. But yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, I hate that.
Right, and I've gotten that all my life. Oh wow, you know, all disabled people just must be amazing and awesome or whatever because you are amazing and awesome, or we don't think of you as disabled. You're not, you know, you're the one of the good ones. You know,
Right.
you're a different disabled person. I'm like, well, no, I'm still disabled and I still deserve and expect to be treated as a disabled person.
Right. And then like I think there's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I've had more able people be like, well, it's the variety of disabled people. And I think it's not something we don't talk about, but I feel like it's just you hear it a lot more from abled people, I guess. Like that it is a diverse community, and sometimes, and it's true, sometimes our needs are different. Like there are times, you know, if you're no one's, I guess, deathly, but if you're very allergic to dogs or something, and someone else needs a service dog, that's a kind of situation that, you know, is whatever, like that. Yeah, okay, that accommodation becomes difficult because how many both those people and you, it's hard. Like those situations can come up, but most of the time we are dealing with the abled world. Like most of our problems don't come from another disabled person being shitty, or, you know, or not being shitty, but like another disabled person who can't be in the same room as us. Most of the time it's just, you know, the abled world is the problem.
Yeah.
But
exactly. So to see a disabled person do it is kind of jarring.
It is. Yeah.
It's like a blind person getting mad at someone who is in a wheelchair.
Right. And I think there's always a little bit of camaraderie that we have for the most part. You know, like we've been through the trenches together. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it is like if you're socialized as male from birth and you're not given a lot of, you know, and maybe in like a sort of macho toxic masculinity culture, maybe you would just like not, I mean, I could see that's the closest I could see is like the other ways in which he has privilege, but like, you know, on the whole you kind of have to have a lot of added privilege and added like weird toxic masculinity stuff for you to behave that way. Like I feel like the default for a disabled person is probably just to be like, oh, other disabled person, other person who has to deal with the same kinds of bullshit that I deal with. Like there's so much more that we have in common on our like just perspective affect, just our day-to-day lives, even if they all come in different shapes and sizes of how we are discriminated against, we still have a very similar emotionally experience. And so I think that it was also very jarring for me as well. And like, I think there's sometimes you're like, you don't always know an entire situation. So I could see being like confused on what was going on and someone being like, oh, that person's also disabled. And be like, oh, fuck. But like, yeah, it was just him being an asshole for no good reason.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But hey, I guess blind people can be assholes too, is the moral of this movie.
Sure. And I think, and I think that's true. We don't know every single disabled person on the planet Earth. There's probably some assholes out there. Yeah. Or
it's just like we've also never seen a movie with any other blind person we know. So part of me is just like, is this what we need to start with? Like when we're trying to like, even if they're out there, I would. There's a lot of the people in my life. I'd probably rather see a movie that is like them than this one in a way.
Sure. Yeah, and it's. As a disabled person, it's really hard to root for a disabled person who's a total asshole. And when we watch a movie, or when I'm watching something and I see a disabled person, any disability, doesn't matter, I automatically want to root for them,
right?
Because you relate to them.
Yeah. So
it's really hard and jarring when that whole system is just turned on its head,
right? And then you have like this kind of, and I think it's sort of people who create art like that, it's like, oh, it's a way of, like the disability justice thing of like, disabled people are humans too and they're flawed. Yeah, and I think that is what the movie's trying to do, basically. But yeah, I just don't know if we need to do it. I also was just like, okay, fine, whatever. I don't relate to Adam Scott in the movie. And I'm glad that a lot of the things he does are not like specifically blind stuff, because then I would get mad, because I'd be like, why did you make this asshole be an asshole because he's blind? Like, you're making an asshole character that's asshole
he's
his blindness.
He's an asshole, but he's not like, the character itself isn't offensive,
right?
He's an asshole,
right? He's an asshole in just kind of like, just being a dude that doesn't care about other people, basically.
Which is, I don't know, It's hard because I don't. Yes, we've established that his character is not great, but I also don't necessarily want to just write him off as a person, I guess, because he's
the character.
As a character, yeah, because he's doing. I'm just trying to find any reason. He's doing all this stuff because blank.
Right, and I guess it's like, it's played up as like, okay, he's trying to do this for the fame, basically, of doing it. And I guess part of the movie is like he's raising money for charity, and we have Jenny Slate and Nick Kroll are both like, see themselves as kind of sort of blame themselves for the, other people getting hurt and feel like they have some debt to society, sort of. Sure. And then like we see Adam Scott as the one who is sort of doing things. Like, you see how every time someone does something as charity or volunteering or whatever, it's kind of seen as more self-involved than it is actually
helping people.
I want to help people, which for me, I was just like, okay, yeah, I mean, people definitely do that, and that's definitely a thing. But it's also, if you're going to show the wide variety of the ways people want to give back to their community, this is a very specific phenomenon that is pretty that is definitely not the only. It's not like every time someone wants to give back to their community, they're doing it for self-centered reasons. Like, that happens, but it's also but not inherent.
Right. In the end, the money is still going back to the community. He's not committing fraud. He's not embezzling all the money. He is raising it and giving it back to the community.
Right. He's just doing it for like self-centered reasons, basically. Right. Which is like, whatever. It's a thing. I guess.
Isn't that like you said? Isn't that inherent in a lot of charity? I mean, these philanthropists, with billions and billions of dollars, who just up and decide to give money to charity. I mean, isn't there just the tiniest little
Oh,
bit
I hate
of,
that. Yeah.
you know, hey, I'm so and so, and I'm this. You know, this feels
Right,
really
why
good.
not? If people don't want to give it in their taxes, but that's basically the exact same thing, except for the government has more ability to do, you know, get actual programs that are actually helpful to people, theoretically. We don't have healthcare in this country.
Right, but we shouldn't be depending on all these rich philanthropists to just, you know, help
Right,
and
decide
be charitable.
what the money should go to, instead of like having us get the chance to vote for what we want the money to be
We should
going
also
to.
we should also have a government that actually cares enough to you know, enact all of these policies that would help the people of this country anyway.
Yeah, so not political at all, but it is. It is one of those things where, I think charity and giving money to charity, I'm always a little more like, it's not my thing. Like, I'd rather just give my time. But but I think that's, I mean, it is but that's a sad thing too, is I'm like, I want to see more disabled characters that are giving their time to the community, because I think that that's a really wonderful thing. And when we're given the opportunity to do that, I think that I think it should be a right. You know, like, I think when places, we should be able to give back to our community, because a lot of us really want to be able to do that.
It's really cool to watch Robbie do all these things.
Yeah,
I mean, he's running marathons and swimming across the lake. Granted, he gets help, but honestly, that's okay.
Well, he needs the help.
I'm okay with that. He's tired and can barely stay afloat. But you know, he finishes. You know, so he's still doing all of these things for the community, whether or not his character is doing it for the right reasons or not. These things are still being done, so he is donating his time.
Right, and so that's kind of like. I don't hate that about his character entirely, but I also felt like the movie is just kind of like
over it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I think the way he goes about it is, you know, I don't think should be a shining example. This is not how I would write how a blind person can give back to their community or like other communities. You know, I don't think his way is overly helpful, really, because it is still very self-focused, and it's all about how inspirational he is. And the characters, you know, say very ableist things to him, and they're like, wow, you're such an inspiration. It's so amazing you do this. And he just is like loving it.
I am. That's me.
Which, I mean, I don't know, probably people like that who, like, you know, I think that can be, especially with sports, it's like, you know, even though I'm disabled, I still did this sport, and I'm an inspiration to kids and stuff, and it's like, that stuff's always well-intentioned, even if I don't think it's really that helpful, and I think it creates a lot of problematic things in the world, but I understand, like, I empathize with the people who do that, because they're basically like, I want to be recognized as both me as a human, and I want other people to see that they're, you know, can do things, and that they shouldn't like give up on life just because they became disabled, which is something I agree with. So, you know, I think there's some decent things in that, but it also is ridiculous. And a lot of times people then are held to different standards because of it. And it's also like an inspiration just that we can do stuff is silly. But yeah, Adam Scott loves that in the movie, which you're already like, okay, well, he's not one of us. He's not one of the good disabled people.
He's not one of the good ones.
Yeah, he's like the disabled people version of that abled conversation where you're like, yeah, that guy is not. He's not one of the ones who hates being called inspirational.
Right.
But. Yeah.
But yeah, and in the end, everything is pretty much tied up with a bow. Adam Scott keeps doing what he's doing, and Jenny Slate and Nick Kroll profess their love to each other.
Yeah, and they're like now in a relationship.
Yeah. Oh, and of course we did have to have the sighted people get naked and then put clothes back on.
Oh my God.
In front of, you know, at first I was annoyed, but then the more I watched that scene play out, it was kind of funny because
just like the lanes they went to go through was funny,
and he's just sitting there right in between them, and I'm thinking he must hear, you know, the
rustle
of the claw, their hearts, you know, beating if the room was quiet enough. The way their breath sounds like.
But he's so socially unaware is the thing. He's just like, as a character, it's not that he's just blind. He's just a very unaware person, which is not, most blind people are not like that. It's, you know, I'm sure there are ones out there, but most of us have a lot more perceptiveness, and he just doesn't.
Right. I mean, it's you walk into a room and there's two people who are having sex. I mean,
yeah, they're like
you're
literally,
not.
you just can figure that out.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
by a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of those things where I was just like, it was also like they were dumb to put themselves in that situation as
Sure.
well. So part
Yeah,
of me was like,
yeah.
it could be funny because I think they knew they were being dumb by doing this, and then they felt stupid about doing it. So I was like, okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit more like it can be funny because they know that what they did was stupid.
Right. Right. Yeah. It was that was one of the few times I caught myself laughing at that trope.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's funny that we don't have it more often, honestly, because again, this movie has him driving. Why
My dad used to let me do that too. I mean, I didn't get
Really?
to sit. I didn't get to sit in the driver's seat by myself, but I got to move the steering wheel and stuff. Oh yeah,
but
it's not a good idea. Don't
No.
do it. I'm not saying you should do it, but you know.
yeah, I mean, it's a thing of like him being, I mean, it fits more with the plot of just like, because it was more of like building a character dynamics, because it's like the parents enable this and are always like, oh, it's so great when he gets to drive, it's so
Right,
fun. And it's him kind of showing off how physically able. It is kind of funny, he is an asshole because he's so obsessed with being physically able to do things, and then he's also so obsessed with looks, and so it's like, haha, disabled person can't see, and all he cares about are looks and abilities, which is just like, you know, there's a futility to that, but we don't really get to see him like totally feel the futility of it.
No.
It's more that he just kind of realizes he's so caught up in being blind, I guess, that he doesn't.
Right. Well, and he needs to at least be grateful for Nick Kroll and all of the stuff that he's done for him
Right.
throughout his life. I mean, if he only learns one thing, at least that's the one thing that he learns, that he should acknowledge Nick Kroll's existence and actually let him have some of the glory, because without him he would fare much differently. I'm not saying he needs a guide to do these things.
Right. Well, I mean, in
But-
some ways, it's more dangerous if he doesn't have one. I
That's
wouldn't feel
true.
comfortable doing that without someone there guiding.
Right. Well,
The running,
yeah.
maybe I could do. But
I guess I was thinking more about the running. Yeah, but no, obviously you need a team if you're going to attempt to swim a lake. I mean, even sighted people have a team if they're
Right.
going to swim, attempt something like that. So yeah, not getting rid of guides altogether, but
he should be more. It's hard because I'm also just like, I also understand how frustrating it could be when you're in a very individualistic culture and you're constantly having to rely on other people.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that dynamic can get frustrating. But it's interesting because this movie just doesn't. That is so not present at all, because it's like, because Adam Scott is so self-centered that you just don't have that feeling like he feels like frustrated by needing to rely on other people. He just doesn't care. Like, he just
Right.
uses people in a way that's different from a normal, like the normal things that blind people have to do, where they have to lean on other people even when they don't have a choice. Because like most of the time that's not like an asshole being like, hey, I'm not going to care even though you're doing all this stuff for me. Usually how that is like someone's in, an abusive relationship for 10 years because they don't feel like if they leave, they don't feel like they'll be able to be safe, and and they're relying on this person for things, and so they'll put up with the emotional abuse. Like, that's the more common scenario.
Right.
So part of me
Right.
was just like, okay, well, this is like, I mean, like, when you actually think of it as blind representation, it becomes way more problematic, because you're like, this
Yeah.
is not what it looks like most of the time.
No. But I mean, and it's the total inverse of the sibling relationship. I mean, usually you would have it play out that the able-bodied one is doing all this stuff and is
Right,
great,
right.
and it's the blind person who has to come to terms with who they are. But this is, the dynamic is completely flipped.
Right, which I think it's like a lot of the movie is just commenting on these narratives of blindness. Like, the most blindness that's there is like saying, okay, these are the ways we talk about blindness, and let's just do the opposite of that, or like the way we deal with it in media. But as we know on this podcast, we never do it right. Like there's like twice in this entire podcast that we've been like, good representation, full stop. You know, most of the time it's fucked up and problematic. So like if you're just taking something that's fucked up and problematic to its core and then flipping it, it's just a mirror image of it doesn't change it. You know, it's not making it better. So I think that that's just kind of like, I think it's commenting on media that has no grounding in actual blind people's experience, and this has no grounding in actual people's blind experience, because you have a writer who's sighted, you have actors who are sighted, like you can't, and it is one of those things where it's like you can't, I felt bad, I was like, you can't make a different story about blind people when you don't include a single blind person in the process.
And you have to ask yourself, why would she write this character? Why make him blind? Why? That's a choice that she made.
Why?
And I can't really come up with a good reason as to why Adam Scott has to be blind.
Yeah, I mean, other than the whole thing is a joke on narratives about blind people. I really think that's it.
Other than that. Yeah. And it's ha ha ha. Isn't it funny that, you know, this dude who's just this overachiever and has everything he wants in his life. Oh my God! But he's blind.
It's so funny. Yeah,
it's so funny.
Which is just. Yeah, and
don't you, Nick Kroll, don't you feel, you know, like you're less than and you're emasculated and by this blind dude?
Right, it's hilarious.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's weird how much. It's also, for me, I was kind of weirded out. I was like, this probably should be more offensive than it is. Because I think I was also just like, when we talk about it, it feels so much more offensive.
Right. Like, two things are happening in this conversation. This movie feels more offensive, but it also feels a little funnier.
Yeah.
When you're having to talk about what actually happened and what made us laugh.
Right. It is weird. But I think it's also just, when watching it, I think it was easier to laugh at things because I just had to completely put down all blind experiences. Like, I was like, I can sometimes relate to Nick Kroll's character and some of his emotional stakes. And that was the only relating I did in the whole movie. Like, I didn't really relate to Jenny Slade's character at all.
No. And
because I thought that I think like maybe blaming yourself and thinking you're a bad person for something that was just kind of unfortunate that it happened. Like, I get that. Like, I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense.
And her character arc does have a resolution because she does go visit her previous boyfriend's parents,
and he was going to break up with her.
Right. And they respond with, well, we already knew.
Right.
We knew that. So, you know, she's carrying around this horrific burden, all of this guilt and everything, and it turns out in the end she didn't have to at all.
Right.
Which usually is how sometimes, I can't say usually, but which sometimes that's just how things in life shake out. I mean, I know I will get worried and anxious about something and just feel awful and then finally come clean about whatever it was, and the usual response is, well, I knew that already.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what did I do for the past week? Feeling so down and so hard and being so hard on myself. I didn't actually have to do any of that.
Right. You don't, it's like the holding it in is the problem of like, you know, not addressing it straight on and thinking that by doing something in one place you're going to make the other thing better, and like that's it's a common problem. I guess
I think Jenny Slate's character just needed that final nail, that final reassurance to be like, okay, I can move on and I can start a relationship with Nick Kroll now.
Right.
I've gotten that go ahead.
Which is like, sure, okay. Like, even though I didn't relate to her, I was like, it seems like a real thing somewhat. Like, so, you know, it's definitely, some of it's pretty ridiculous and overplayed, but at least I was like, okay, I guess this feels at least like it's a thing.
Right.
You know?
I mean, we know one thing about the boyfriend. He did not have good nipples.
That was the big, that was
really not good. Small nipples, tiny nipples.
And what was the other thing that he did? Oh gosh, there was another thing that she was mad about. Because I know that his thing, that reason he was going to break up with her is because she watched too much TV.
Right. Yeah.
But I forgot. She had another silly... Oh, the way he treated waiters, which I was like, that's legit.
That was it. Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's a legit reason to break up with someone, though.
Yes, that's you can find out a lot about a person by the way they treat waiters.
Right. I was like, that. Don't blame yourself then for that.
No. Yeah, and Nick Kroll, of course, is very nice to waiters, and I guess has average sized nipples. I don't fucking know.
His nipples are great, apparently.
Apparently,
but yeah,
really
I mean,
great.
like, that's... But Nick Kroll, yeah, he's mostly a relatable character, and he's sometimes not. Like, sometimes he behaves in a way that's just kinda...
I think if you want a better experience, honestly, I would skip this one and just watch Blind Dating.
Blind dating has a lot of
be
different
honest.
problems.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm not saying it's not problematic. It absolutely is. But if I was going to sit down and watch one of these again, if I had the choice, I would always pick Blind Dating.
Interesting. I think I would actually pick this one just because I think this movie doesn't really have blind people in it. And I think it's funny because we come to this podcast from completely different perspectives of like, I, before this, would never seek out, I would actively not want to watch blind characters because the representation is so bad always that and granted, not always, as we learned on the podcast, every year we'll watch one movie that is actually good representation. But like, it is so, the miss rate is so high, and sometimes the characters are so offensive that it's like actually affects my life. So like not being able to talk about it but just watching it is like torture to me, but like getting to talk about it makes me feel better about it. But I think like the nice thing about this movie is you don't have to think of blindness. It's really, there's not really a blind character. Like, you know, there's kind of JT is some funny things like, or GT. What is this?
Yeah,
character
GT.
is GT,
Yeah.
not JT. GT has some, you know, funny stuff that he does. It's kind of like cute blind person things, like there's just a blind stoner jokes, you know? So it's like, okay, that's kind of cute. It's about 4 minutes of the movie, but mostly there's not really blind characters or representation at all. Like, I just didn't have to think about being blind or blind people at all watching this movie. So I think for me that was more comforting. Whereas Blind Dating, all the problems were like very related to blindness in ways that were like, you know, reminded me too much of my childhood, you know? Like, I think that this would be more comforting because it's just like, I like Nick Kroll, he's endearing, and I don't have to really think about blind people. It's just Adam Scott being an asshole.
Right. And we get to watch Jenny Slate, who I love. So yeah, I mean, I love Adam Scott, Nick Kroll, Jenny Slate. I mean, I was super. That was one of the things that drew me to pick this. Was, oh wow, the cast is great.
Yeah, it's a good. It's fun people to watch, and that I think it's, you know, it's an hour and 20 minutes, and it's a comedy.
Yeah, dramedy comedy. Yeah, it won't. There are worse ways to spend your afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a good situation, like creating situations.
Right. I'm not going to actively steer people away from this.
Yeah.
If you wanna watch it, go for it. Absolutely. It's fine. Like I said, not a horrible way to spend an afternoon. But I'm definitely not going to go screaming on the top of any mountains, right now, and being like, oh my God, yes, drop what you're doing and check this movie out.
Yeah, we don't watch a lot of movies written by women, and you can kind of tell that it's written by a woman because the emotional stakes. Not the emotional stakes, but like some of the character traits just feel more real than some of the movies written by men.
Right. Well, yes, and it's it's guys, it's brothers, and they solve their problems without punching or without having to.
But they also have toxic masculinity.
They do have toxic masculinity.
It's just sometimes men write stories. Obviously, not all men. Hashtag. No. But they'll write stories with characters that are very stilted, and you're like, have you met a human being?
Right.
Like, do you know how human beings talk? And you're just like, this is like, some bad movies written by men are very bad. Whereas like, I feel like you very rarely ever get a woman doing that. Sometimes, but like, I think that being a student of the way people talk just seems to, for some reason, women are just more socialized to do that.
Right. And this movie, at least you can say that for the most part, the characters do feel like real people. Yeah. The situations are kind of absurd, and some of the dialogue is kind of absurd, but at least they feel like real people.
Right. Which is, that in the way that they talk to each other feels. you're not like, oh, the writing is such that I feel like I'm watching someone write a movie.
Right. Oh my God, this is how humans talk.
Right. Whereas they're like, I was actually really impressed from the beginning. I was like, oh, this is like decent writing. Like, it just feels like they're all human beings, which I don't know, maybe is at a very low bar, but like a lot of times when we start a movie, I'm like not necessarily expecting that, because it is weirdly a skill that people have. And some people don't. But yeah, this movie, I mean, maybe even probably more than Blind Dating, I think, is probably more written like human beings. But I don't know. We watched Blind Dating a long time ago, so I can't fully remember.
That would be a really interesting rewatch, actually, to go back now and after watching so many movies to rewatch Blind Dating and be like, oh yeah, okay.
So yeah, now that we have, does he drive a car? I don't think he does.
I don't think he does. They sneak onto a train in the very, very beginning of the movie.
Oh, but he does ride a bike, which is another weird trope.
Right. Well, but his friend's driving.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
No, I think it's, I don't remember. Who knows? Whatever. We've watched too many movies.
I'm mixing movies. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. All right. I think we're ready to be done.
I think so. I can give my rating first.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna give this movie a 2045.
Okay.
I don't know why I've given it a 5. Oh, I was just like 2040, 2050. I'll split the difference. I mean, like, again, there's really, it's not that much of a blind representation. I mean, I think the things it's trying to flip on their head, it's good to like think those things are stupid. Like, that's not wrong. To just do the inverse of them, I don't think is really all that effective. But I get that as a first attempt. It's not like I think you have to build up good cinematic language for certain stories, and we just have not even bothered to try making any of the blind ones realistic at all. Like, you know, a lot of the tropes just are so far from our lives that, like, you kind of have to, if you really wanted to make something that's really good representation, you have to start from scratch. And so I think before a lot of people do that, like, you just kind of have stuff where they're like, oh, let's flip it on its head, you know, and that's the best you can do, because templates are helpful. So I, like, sure, I'll give it that it was not made in a world where we have good representation. It was just like fucking off about it. It's made in a world where all the representation for the most part is bad, and it's making fun of that. So, you know, that's why I'm giving it something higher than 2020. But overall, there's, you know, like, and I think that's a noble goal, but, you know, there's no blind people who worked on the movie, like, at all, and that is frustrating. Like, you just would not, it's just, the patience I have with that is so low at this point. It's like, you just wouldn't do that with other, like, I just don't think you can get away with that with non-disabilities as much anymore. Like, you still could potentially, but it's like, I feel like we're starting to get more and more angry about a lot of things.
People would talk. People would say something. And
I feel like now we're still I don't know if we're at the point where people would call that out entirely. Like, the disabled people who call that out are usually just drowned out by, you know, able people being like, I don't know why this fucking blind people be tripping. So, you know, that's frustrating. And yeah, and it's like, and having an asshole blind person is just, yeah, I didn't relate to him.
We're not saying you can't do it.
You can, yeah. I didn't relate to him at all.
Right,
it's I'm not like him.
Right, it's your movie, it's your script. If you want to write an asshole who is blind, fine. But just, you know, yeah, exactly.
It's not for blind
we're not going to
people.
relate
it's
to him.
It's not really for us, I think, is what it is. It's because we're not asked to relate to him at all.
Right, and I think that's a really good summation of this film. Is it's really not for blind people.
It's called My Blind Brother. The brother is the other.
Right. And on that note, I'm giving it a 2020. Nice. I'm just really lukewarm on this whole thing. I really didn't. Talking about it with you was more fun for me than watching it. I just really, I didn't like it. Yeah. I really wanted to like it. I really did. I love the performers who are in it, and I think there are funny things that happen in it, and I think it's amazing that it's written and directed by by a woman, like Sophie. Actually, Sophie Goodhart.
Goodhart. Yes,
oh my
we
God.
should have said that.
We should have said that long ago.
Yes.
Yeah, her name is Sophie Goodhart, and I hope she keeps doing.
Her name is
Sophie Goodhart.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I hope she keeps doing what she's doing and keeps writing and keeps directing, because this is not a poorly made film.
Yeah,
at all. It's
good writing.
The writing is good. The performances are good. It just didn't jive with me personally.
Yeah. Just maybe do a subject that's a little bit more personal. I don't know. I didn't see anything about her being blind. I will feel very bad if like that's also something that the internet is hiding from us. But from what I can tell, she's not blind. So
right, and I mean the fact that you couldn't find any remnants of a blind consultant or a blind person on set or that worked behind the scenes. I just think that's. It's just not very diligent, and I get it. This movie probably didn't have a very huge budget. It's a very small movie. It feels like
it's filmed in Ohio.
Okay, yeah, it's very small. It feels like an independent movie, which is probably what it was. So it's cool that it's out there and that people can watch it, but it's a 2020 for me. I don't necessarily think it's something I'm going to be running back to.
Yeah,
honestly, if I want to watch all these people, I'll watch Big Mouth or The Kroll Show.
Yeah, well,
to be honest.
And if you're running back to it, you will need your brother to be
I would
tied
need
to you with a red rope.
Which is something I would never in a million years ever want.
Even unless your brother was Nick Kroll, of course.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Nick Kroll, if you're listening, no.
Do you want to do blind asides?
Yes, let's do.
I mean, I'll just say that first because it's kind of what you just said. But I was just doing Big Mouth because I love Big Mouth, and
Yay!
I was just watching this. I was
so
like
good.
More wanting to watch Big Mouth, and I did just finish the most recent season, which is the third season.
I believe so.
Season?
Yeah,
third season. I was like, I realized I forgot which one, but I think it's probably a show a lot of people watch and talk about. Mm-hmm. So, it is just about middle school, but it is
it's about going through changes.
Exactly. And you get the voiceover or the audio descriptions will just the weird thing where it's like Jenny Slate, a body fills up with white blood cells.
The intro is the best thing.
And then I'm always sad. I'm like,
great.
This is such a good song.
Oh, I know. You have to listen to it with and then without so you can hear the song because the song is great.
Yeah. Which is I'm always like I want to turn it off, but then I'm like, but then I have to turn it right back on. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it is. It's a middle school. I guess it's what is it? Magical realism. I mean, it's animated, so I guess. It leans into the like.
It's a show about puberty.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But the new season's really fun, and it has. I just love Zach Galifianakis is the Gratitude.
Yes. The Gratitude. Oh my gosh.
Which is really great.
It's so good.
They're just every time they come up with characters that like the Shame Wizard or the Depression. Is it Depression Kitty?
It's Depression Kitty.
Yeah.
She makes an appearance.
She doesn't really have a pun, I don't think.
No,
but she just sits on people.
I get her.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's just the way all of the like embodiments of, and of course hormone monsters are main characters.
Yes.
But yeah, the way they embody different puberty emotions is really it's a very fun show, and I like that it. I don't know that it just it revels in a lot of things, but
it's okay. It's gross. It's extremely gross, but it's also so honest and heartfelt that I don't mind.
Right. It's not like, even though the characters are all they are likable in very different ways, but like it does not veer away from anything at all. Like it is willing to go wherever it's gonna go.
It's so cool. I wish I could have snuck or had access to a show like this when I was growing up, honestly, because the coolest thing about this show is it makes everything feel normal. Yeah, it normalizes so much, and it does a lot. And I like that it, you do have like queer characters, and and even though Jenny Slate does play the
Black Missy, who is
Missy, our person of color. Yeah.
Well, one of
them.
characters,
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. They make a joke about in the third season where she's going through an identity crisis. She's like, "Well, I'm played by a middle-aged white woman," and so she's a lot. Which I think it was one of those things where, culture, we realized things were bad pretty recently. Even though
one of those,
you could always there was always access to that information, but I think people were more.
At least, you know what? Kudos to them for at least addressing it. Like, I don't know if her voice will change. There's kind of a part of me that I hope that it doesn't, because that's just how Missy sounds in my head now.
Right, and it'd be weird to get like a black actress just to imitate Jenny Slate. Like, that would feel weird.
That would also feel weird. So
because it's like you're still imitating a white person now that started the character, so you don't really have a good option.
It's there between a rock and a hard place. So I think doing that is
at least calling attention to it.
At least calling it out.
And there are, the voice cast is not entirely white people either. It's just Missy is not played by a person of color.
Tune in next week to hear our Big Mouth podcast.
I know. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but it is a great show. And it's just, I don't know. Go watch it. There's a lot. We could actually have an entire podcast about it. Definitely.
Oh, I'm down. I love Big Mouth.
Yes. But.
My blind aside for this week is actually another animated show.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the Kroll Show.
I know, right? It's actually the Kroll Show, which is also cool. But no, mine is actually animated show. It's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Oh.
Mine is streaming on Amazon Prime. I've been watching Invincible.
Okay.
So this is a new superhero series based on Robert Kirkman's comic of the same name. Invincible happens to be one of the biggest creator-owned superheroes. So Kirkman actually owns the IP.
Nice.
Invincible isn't owned by like Marvel or DC or anybody else. So basically Invincible tells the story of Mark Grayson, and he finds out that he lives in a family of superheroes. Well, not finds out. He knows that his dad is Omni-Man, which is this universe's Superman, basically. And Mark, in the first episode, is super duper excited because he wants his powers to finally come in. And at the end, they do. And so he takes up the moniker of Invincible. And this is not necessarily a spoiler because it happens in the first episode, but the first episode of the show ends with Omni-Man slaughtering all of the other superheroes, basically, on this like Avengers style team. And this show is animated like Superman the Animated Series, kind of in like a Bruce Timm kind of animation style, but this show is graphic. I mean, it is one of the bloodiest, most crazy,
the other
violent,
kind of graphic.
Yeah, the other kind of graphic. It is one of the most bloodiest, violent shows on TV.
Wow.
That I have seen, or on streaming that I have seen, and I'm not necessarily saying yes, I love it more, but at least what I can say about the violence is the violence, at least in the story, serves a purpose. They're not being, I don't feel like it's gratuitous for gratuitous sake, just because we're on Amazon and we can show fonts of blood spurting from corpses and stuff. And I think the story is extremely compelling. Steven Yeun plays Mark, and he's just the best. I love it. He's just perfect for this character. I mean, oh my God, he's doing such a great job. But I love all the other characters. I think they're really interesting. Zazie Beetz plays Amber, his girlfriend, and Andrew Ramos, I hope I'm saying his name right, Broadway star from the Book of Mormon and other things, plays William, Mark's best friend. This show is there's characters that are LGBTQ. The cast is really diverse. Fun fact, Jason Mantzoukas, who is in Big Mouth, is also in this show. He plays a hero named Rex Explosion.
Oh, wow. Sounds about right.
Yeah, I know, right? Zachary Quinto is on the cast. I mean, it's stacked cast. Sandra Oh plays Mark's mother.
Sandra Oh, wow.
Sandra Oh, yeah. Cast is stacked. But it's great. I think the animation is really fun to watch and colorful, and I'm really into the story, and this is making me want to pick up Invisible because I've actually never read a lot of that comic. So
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, it's Invincible, not Invisible. It's Invincible, and it's streaming on Amazon.
Awesome. Oh yeah, and Big Mouth's on Netflix.
Yeah.
I really thought you were gonna do like a very kid show, because I was like, which I
I
guess Big
know,
Mouth is about
right?
children, so it's just very like
yeah, but
a lot of sex and
so much.
Yeah, it is.
And I definitely wouldn't let anyone under 16 watch Invincible. It's very, very bloody.
It's like the classic American dynamic of lots of blood and lots of sexual innuendos. Nice. Though that sounds cool. So check that out.
Yeah.
So what are we doing next week, Sky?
Yes, Sky.
I
What are we
always
doing
have to
next
ask
week?
myself. So we were stuck in the 90s for a while. So you brought us to much more current place. So I'm going to bring us to 1942.
Hey, that
Classic.
sounds about right.
Yep. So we're doing Eyes in the Night, which is a movie from 1942, and it is about a blind man who fights Nazis.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, yes.
That'll be fun. And it's 42, so it's like when legit Hitler was still alive.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I'm interested to find out. What happens. Apparently a guide dog is involved, so I think it's going to be a good time.
I'm excited. This sounds really interesting.
Yes. Awesome. I'm excited too. Okay. Our theme song is by Lucia Fasano. Our YouTube is Citizen White Cane Podcast. Our Twitter is White Cane Pod. Our Facebook and our Instagram are both Citizen White Cane, and our email address is citizenwhitecanepod@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voice message, there's a link in the show notes. What would you do if you felt guilty for killing your boyfriend? What would you do to repent?
Do you have average size nipples?
Oh yeah, nipple size is really important. And do you have have you broken up with someone because of their nipple size as well? Yeah, it's important. Or did you write a movie with an unlikable blind character? And why?
If you did, we want to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. Or if you know of another one, let us know and we'll watch that too. You can leave any of those things in a voice message. Tell us all about it. Link in the show notes. You can subscribe to the podcast and also rate and review. We need reviews, so please do that. If you like the podcast, if you don't like it, give us a 5-star review and then just tell us why you don't like it in the review.
Yeah, it makes the crushing blow of defeat much easier.
Yeah, at least it will help the algorithms. And if you have something sexist to say, then just give us a 5-star review. Let's just use this space bar and then we'll send that as the review. Anyway. And come back next week for Eyes in the Night. We're gonna fight some fucking Nazis.
Woohoo!
My favorite thing.
Always punch
always
Nazis.
Fighting Nazis. We'll see you then.
See ya. Bye.
Citizen